Hello, I'm Daniel Frankel, founder and editor of Next TMT. Today we have Lucas Bertrand, who's CEO and co-founder of Looper Insights, a UK-based company that in the digital age, with content distributed on TVOS platforms, pay TV platforms, digital stores all over the globe, helps content marketers find their stuff, essentially. We're going to do a quick overview of their core products, which involve a proprietary metric called media placement value. We'll discuss that in a second. And then we're going to get into their latest offering, the sports visibility tracker, which in a crowded fourth quarter for American sports has a lot of value right now. But Lucas, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you, Daniel. It's great to see you again. And yeah, so for those folks who don't know me, I'm the founder CEO here at Lucas Insights, a company that was built to help, as you say, clients find their stuff. And if you want me to dive straight in, I can give a bit of an overview.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit, roll 10,000 feet, what you guys do before we launch into the visibility tracker.
Absolutely. So the company was built to help clients understand where their content and the apps that content is promoting on connected TV devices, whereabouts it is. So we're looking at, when we talk about connected TVs, a smart TV, a set-top box or MVPD in the industry parlance, games consoles, streaming devices, pucks, dongles, all of those types of different devices, including mobile as well, iOS and Android. So what we do is we actually scroll through the user interface and we take a video and images of each placement. And we then bring that image, and that might be, let's say, a Disney Plus app logo, and we bring that into our cloud-based platform, and we use image recognition and text recognition AIs to understand what we're looking at. And it says that's Disney Plus, and we know that belongs to Disney. And then we can say, right, well, if there was 10 spots on that homepage and Disney had one of them, they've got 10% share of voice. And we started off with the share of voice as the kind of key metric, but we realized pretty quickly that it became a bit useless when you're looking at a UI that's got 5,000 spots. Because 10% of 5,000 sounds great, but are you in the bottom of the shelf where no one goes, or are you on the front and center, true above the fold homepage where it really counts? And if you're on that true above the fold center of the homepage where it really counts, you actually don't need 10% share of voice to get a big uplift in your subscribers, in engagement, churn reduction, and also selling more ads. So that premium real estate is where we then adjusted the share of voice metric to then weight that share of voice. And that's called media placement value, MPV in our short.
Yeah, it's like Moneyball. They say the goal is to get it down to one specific number, and that's what the attempt is here.
Absolutely. And, it gives a really good directional view for clients on, are we improving in getting more of the high quality prominence that's going to lead to those outcomes of more subscribers, more streams, more engagement, churn reduction?
So I was up till about midnight watching 18 innings of World Series baseball. I don't know that if in the UK you followed that. I know you have watched plenty of Australian football and rugby, but you do recognize that the streaming market is now the sports market. They're one and the same. And you
Absolutely.
have a new offering. I think our readers are pretty familiar with what you've tracked so far, but now you're kind of doubling down on sports. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, in a really big way. I mean, we've started our sports tracking about 6 months ago, working with a client who wanted to understand how much visibility their live sports was getting on a huge MVPD. And we were quickly able to demonstrate that the kind of 50-50 parity that they were expecting against the main competitor wasn't quite there. We also showed different reasons for that happening, and they were able to address that. And we went from like scanning twice a week to give good direction to like 6 times a day. Then we took it one step further, and we had a client that was launching a big event in the US actually in the last 2 weeks. And this was tracking one of the major leagues. And they wanted to have eyes on Like they've got a war room. They need to ensure that all the execs are super happy because they've just invested hundreds of millions of dollars in this event, and they need to make sure it goes off without a hitch. And so what we did is we provided uh, a live on glass view of all the key devices that they wanted to track. And we were looking a few hours before the event to make sure that the event was being properly merchandised on those connected TVs, those MVPDs, mobile, etc. And we could see that in some cases it wasn't. It wasn't actually, the promotion didn't have the right time, or it wasn't actually on the screen giving the signposts to the user on what to click on to go and watch that game. And so that's huge, right? If you've got nothing to click on, you don't think it's there, you move on to something else, or you're a really frustrated and pissed off consumer because you're really desperate. You're there, you got your beer ready to go, you got all your mates there in the room to watch the game, and you can't find it.
Been there.
We all,
Yeah, you mentioned that you're not just not visible, you're ceding visibility to your competition, especially in the fourth quarter. It's really competitive in terms of live sports. So it's a zero sum game. I think that was one of the more interesting aspects of your sales pitch. I thought there's an imperative to be visible. There's only so
absolutely.
much. Yeah,
You're so right. And, it's like, when we used to have just an EPG, it's the same thing, right? You've got a true above the fold placement. You've got to be there if you've got a big game on. If you're not there, people don't just assume it's not even on. So you're not going to get that audience. And the rest of the audience is having to go dig to find where that game is, which, as we know, with the right situation in the industry, it's hard enough for a consumer to find where their team is being broadcast or streamed this week versus next week. That's really tough, in particular in the North American market. So being able to find and get a clear signpost on where can I watch it, at what time, what subscriptions do I need ahead of time is really important. Like there's no point just start to promote it 5 minutes before the game, because as we all know with technology, we're kind of scrambling for which remote do we need, which subscription do I need to log in, do I need to reset my password, like all of that stuff, right? So it's really important that a few hours before the game that the streamers are promoting, they've got all the right metadata, and if they don't, they have a solution like ours that's going to flag an alert to them in real time so they can get on the phone and they can get things fixed.
right. You don't want to be a consumer who's going through a sign up process as the first quarter or period or whatever it might be is unfolding. It's not a good position to put your consumer.
Absolutely. I had this problem with the Australian rules grand final. My team was in it. It was 4 a.m. I'm driving around London trying to find a pub. And I got to the pub and I didn't have my ID. I'm like, how old do you think I am? I mean, I'm really flattered. You think I'm under 18. It's under 18 in the UK. And they
Yeah,
wouldn't let me in. I was like, this is insane. Anyway, so then I'm trying to get the AFL app. I'm trying to download it. I'm trying to sign in. It was quarter time by the time I got in there. And it was what,
right.
this is my team. I've been waiting all year for this. I mean, it was just a palaver.
They would let that's it's almost a movie. One of those things where like he finally gets in at the last minute of the game. So who are you in terms of clients at this point? Is it early days? You're working with a lot of local providers, regional sports networks, or national providers, or both? What's the scope here?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're not working with any of the sports bodies themselves. We're working with the streamers and broadcasters who have got those rights and are streaming those rights. So, as you can see on our website, we work with most of the global streamers, all the studios, and then a few local broadcasters and streamers as well now. And that's just growing and growing. So, yeah, look, we've in the US, for example, the majority of the sports that are being broadcast, are within the groups that we work with. And yeah, for us, it's a really exciting opportunity to help our clients make sure that they're getting real time visibility alerts And then they get this measurement piece of, as you mentioned, looking at, well, how much prominence did my event get versus my competitors? So if if I've got, as we know, the rights are all chopped up, so I might have some NFL here. How did my competitor, who's also got NFL on a different day of the week, how are they getting prominence on that same device? So how much prominence is Samsung giving them, or LG or Fire TV giving that NFL match on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays? And from looking at that data, we can then help clients with their strategies to maximize their prominence by spending a little in terms of prominence buying, but then earning a lot. And that creates efficiency. I want to spend $1 and I want to get $2 in earned media. That's kind of the goal.
What I think is interesting is I had thought, 5 years ago, this TVOS picture would simplify and consolidate by now. But if anything, it seems to be getting more complicated. The trade desk put out a innovative new product, Ventura. We were at IBC and Whale TV, a bunch of, kind of smaller entities, or in some cases, Vidal's pretty big,
Yeah.
still trying to make their way. You have to account for so many gateway OSs at this point. That is getting more fragmented, right? I mean, I'm right
It
about that.
really is. I mean, even within devices, like we have to track different model years for Samsung and LG because
Right.
the UI is different in the same country.
That's crazy. Different
Like
version.
you can't go and say, I want to buy all your TVs in the US or in the UK. I have to actually buy against the model as well, which makes it even more fragmented, even just within the one OS. It's really, really difficult.
I would think another challenge is, as folks like Amazon and Alphabet, Google invest more and more in live sports, you're competing against really big companies with real powerful leverage and get the visibility they want on their own. Maybe you could talk about that. I'm guessing your clients are the guys that have to sort of work around them or completely directly with them.
Well, some of them are clients as well. So,
They are.
yes. So, look, one thing I would say is you've got a really big advantage if you've got your own device. So we see like MLS, for example, really over indexes in our charts because they've got Apple TV. Even though Apple TV isn't nearly as big as a Roku or a Fire TV in terms of installed base, they are able to promote the hell out of MLS, like, day in, day out. They just give themselves a lot of real estate on their own device. And, we see the same thing with Prime Video on Fire TV. They're able to give themselves a lot of really great real estate. Roku channel, again, over indexes because of the Roku install base being the biggest in the US.
So some of this is helping companies like iPhones or Roku devices, very proliferated, maximize that advantage a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you don't have that, how do you compete? And this is where you've got to get really smart. So depending on where you sit in the streaming business, there's a number of channels, right? You can go direct to consumer, and that's really expensive. More and more of these streamers are going through aggregators, whether they're MVPDs or someone like Prime Video channels, now Prime Video subscriptions, which is a huge subscriber acquisition channel for those streamers. It's probably the biggest single channel outside of direct to consumer. And if you don't have this massive scale, it's probably the number one channel you want to be going through. So you really got to understand how to maximize the prominence that you can get on those services. And that's just crucial when you're putting a huge amount of your budget behind these key tentpole events, which are your best chance at getting new subscribers and keeping up your engagement.
So let's talk about your positioning and reach at this point. Now, obviously, the U.S. market's a pretty heavy streaming market at this point, but I'm guessing you're doing a lot of business in Europe as well. You're situated there. You know the market on a global basis. What does it look like? Where are you primarily active?
We are revenue wise, we're heavily skewed out of the US because just where New York and LA is where the money flows from for the globals, and Seattle. And then in terms of regions, we cover 25 countries. So I'm actually currently in the UK. I'm an Aussie, so we cover those, of course. But in APAC, for example, we're very strong in Japan, in India, in Australia. The top five, which they refer to in Europe, which is going to be UK, France, Italy, Spain. We also have some coverage across the Nordics and Benelux. And then we've got a decent amount of coverage in Latin America, so Mexico, Argentina, Chile, as examples.
So the products developed in terms of a kind of an awareness push, a marketing rollout, you chose Thanksgiving. I guess that's obvious. Tons of overlap and a lot of sports competing with each other in a very finite window of time. Maybe talk about that a little bit, why that's sort of a really opportunistic launch window.
Yeah, look, it really is, right? You Americans go nuts for sport around this time of year, and so it's a
We
really
learn,
good
yeah.
one for us to work towards. We've previously covered Winter Olympics, we've covered the Olympics, so for different streaming clients, but this one is just like eyes on. I'm just guessing that it's probably 40% of the budgets are going to go into Q4 for the year in terms of promoting these big events. And even the likes of Netflix is getting in there with its Christmas Day games, for example, which they don't do the rest of the year. So it's really heavily skewed towards that. And so for us, it's really how can we help clients get eyes on all the key devices. We cover 30 different platforms in the US. So clients are able to see ahead of time and during the match or the game what's actually going on, what the consumer really sees on their screen. That's really the key thing here, Dan, is, I'm a consumer sitting at home. What do I actually see? Not what does the metadata feed tell me that it's all fine and everything, right?
Right.
Because if that was the case, then you wouldn't need us at all. And the errors that we pick up are mind blowing, right? They're scary because the investments going in by these streaming companies, by the sporting bodies into their one key brand are huge. And you've got to put that.
You mentioned mistakes. So there are common ones that we're speaking in generalities here, so we're not throwing anybody specifically under the bus. But what do you see that happens that folks are real aware of
Well,
just how?
look, I'll give a tip for the industry. Streamers are new to this. And so they're having to learn how to restructure the presentation of this content for live. I mean, basic things like it doesn't say it's actually live, or it doesn't say what time it's actually going live. It just looks like another VOD asset within this platform, because that's what they deliver day in, day out. And these things are kind of the anomalies, right? So there's kind of some basic learning that needs to happen, and that happens pretty quickly. But then the big things are around the campaigns. I'm running a campaign, I'm putting millions behind this campaign to make sure every key user can see it, and it's not there, or it's where it shouldn't be. It's in a different area. It's not in the homepage. It's not in the sports section. So all of that compliance is really what we help clients understand. And we've got a real-time dashboard, and we're chatting to them in real time. Traffic light system, dead simple. Green, yep, we're all go. This is great. Yellow, we're checking it. And red, we got a problem. We're going to get on the phone. We're going to sort this out.
So I'm guessing, since we're talking about Thanksgiving, that NFL is the most competitive asset in this whole gamut. That folks are, if you have rights to that content, you really want to know where it's presented and how it's merchandised. Yes.
Absolutely. And look, we look at the past data to make these comparisons and these benchmarks. We saw that the dollar MPV value just on the top three devices of like Roku, Fire, and Vizio last year was north of $500,000 in MPV, in earned media value, that they were getting just for the kind of Turkey Day promo that Fubo was doing. So these numbers are going to be way bigger this year. I'd be predicting that they will be in north of $1 million.
And that's bigger than your average TV series, I'm guessing? And how does that compare to
Well, a
other
TV
types?
series is up for a long time. This is something that's only up for a few
Right.
hours. So to get that kind of number, right, you might get that number over a month for a TV series, a mid-level TV series, but to get it in a few hours, just really extraordinary.
Interesting stuff. Well, we're going to continue to track what you guys do. I'm guessing you'll be here in America introducing this product over the next couple of weeks.
I've just landed back in the UK. I've been there the last 2 weeks, so it's been great.
That's good to hear, Lucas. Thanks for sharing that with us. We look forward to hearing more about it as the weeks and months unfold. And I'll sign us out here. I'm Daniel Frankel.
And I'm Lucas Bertrand, and it's lovely to see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.